Thank you very much. It's a incredible pleasure to be here in Athens. I actually first came more than 50 years ago. I came in Greece playing. I was a professional chess player as a youth, and I played in the World Under-21 Chess Championship here. And I also came back in 2010 and other times. And it's great to be in a situation where, Greece is really the leader in growth in Europe and looks to be for a while. So that's just a great feeling. I was asked to just say a few things about, what would the global economy look like? And it's a very unusual picture because normally, if the US does well, after a little while, the rest of the world does well. Or if the rest of the world's doing well, after a while, the US is doing well. And China may be in its own orbit, but again, it certainly interacts with the whole world. We're in a very divergent world at the moment where the US is exuberant, even with the new Chinese AI. I think overall the US is just exuberant. Business people, corporates are largely just ecstatic about the change and the prospects. Europe is very depressed. I've been going to the World Economic Forum for 25 years, and I've never seen the mood as depressed in Europe, not even during the depths of the European debt crisis. And there's this existential fear in Europe that it's just been going in the wrong direction. Europe's been a good global citizen, for example. Everything green. The European Central Bank spends a lot of time on green, but electricity prices are really high. Even Germany's struggling to be competitive in manufacturing. And AI, artificial intelligence, which is very energy intensive, they're not even remotely competitive. It's quite an existential crisis. I don't know what to say about the US. It's just, there's so many things to say about the US. I don't know where to start. Everybody asks, what is Trump going to do? How do I answer that question when, if you could be inside his brain, and I'm not sure that's a healthy place to live, but if you could be inside his brain, I don't think he knows what he's going to do. But my gut feeling is that the economy will do very well this year, but maybe it'll do well the following year. But I think over his 4 years, it's going to be up and then down. And I don't just say, this is not a slur on Donald Trump or a complaint about Donald Trump. It's where the US economy is. It's very overheated. We're having a giant budget deficit. We've also allowed a crazy immigration policy, but increased labor in the short run. And the economy is booming. But if you're growing if you have a 6.7%, almost 7% deficit, and your growth is less than half of that, that's just not very impressive. So we can talk about AI. I am very worried about China. I think China's been very important, especially for Europe, for buying goods from Europe. There are two things going on with China. One is that China is learning to do things cheaper and better across many things in Europe. But another thing is that China is suffering growth malaise, the likes of which it has not seen in 40 years. And a lot of it is rooted in a huge overbuilding of real estate, something I've worked on for years, I've been saying for years. It has come home to roost. It's worse than the United States. It's worse than Iceland. It's worse than Spain and Ireland. And it's going to take a long time. It's not just real estate, but construction. Many of you have probably gone to China. It's so impressive, the roads, the high-speed trains, the buildings. But you know what? If you go to the outer part of China, the smaller cities, which still have 5 million people, it's China, everything looks the same. The buildings are shining, the infrastructure is great, but they have the smell of death in those places. The young people don't want to live there. People are leaving, their birth rates are falling. They put a tremendous amount of money in, and it's not paying off. And it's going to take a long time to play out. And I could pick other things, but the Chinese say, we're doing okay now. It's over. We're recovering. I don't think you have a situation where you're growing supposedly at 5% and your inflation's negative. That just doesn't happen. I think that's, whatever their numbers are, I just don't believe them. And by the way, if I was a Chinese economist and saying that, you get put in jail now, which is really a sign that something's wrong. I've talked about Europe with facing this existential crisis, lack of leadership, of course, having to confront this defense issue, where this isn't a Trump thing, by the way. If Harris had won, this is an election, by the way. I'm an American. Sometimes you say in a sporting event, such a great competition, it's such a shame both sides didn't win. I feel about this election, it's a shame both sides couldn't lose. I was very unhappy with both choices. But I want to say if Harris had won, I mean, I think Europe would also be on its own. She wanted to cut the defense budget. So there's maybe some promise in this. I actually think that in a few months have a book coming out about the dollar and what happened in the past and what it teaches us about in the future. I actually think this is potentially, something that might help Europe, because that's been the U.S. industrial policy, is having defense is a competitive thing. You're competing with others, the world, and it's really the area where U.S. develops its competitive edge technologies. And let me come back to energy. This is such a difficult problem for Europe. So first of all, I was asked to say something about energy security. And one thing I can say is I was at Davos. I actually almost never listen to Trump speak because I'm a busy man and he takes hours and I can read about it later. But there were social pressures to listen to this one. And he said, I will guarantee Europe's security. I would want to guarantee my own economic security. I mean, he says that, and then later he says, yes, I promise that, but you have to do this, this, and this. It's not a comfortable situation. And I think it's important for Europe to diversify its energy sources and probably rethink some of the, maybe slowing down some of the policies that it's done that's made it so uncompetitive in the world. It's wonderful to be a good citizen, but if nobody follows, it puts you in a very, very difficult situation. Lastly, let me just say something about AI. I had been a professional chess player in my youth. That's what brought me to Greece. I represented the United States in the World Championships once, a long time ago. But because of that, I followed AI my whole life. And I am a believer. I mean, I actually done debates on this with Larry Summers, Paul Krugman, Peter Thiel, who all thought, we're never going to invent anything again. It's all over. Growth is going to be really slow. If you had followed, chess is a sandbox for innovation in AI. It always has been. And if you followed things, you would just see these just innovation after innovation after innovation. And I see that. My concern is that not that we don't have innovation, but that our society is not ready for it. It's going to move so fast. So let me just conclude there. I'm optimistic that growth will be good next year, but I understand the nervousness of our children.
Great. Thank you very much. Now, before we move on, if I could just ask you a quick question about AI. Some people are optimistic that this is going to lead to a surge in productivity, and there's absolutely no sign of that so far. It doesn't seem to have had any impact on the labour market either. How optimistic are you that this does turn into a long-term productivity boost? Do you think is that coming?
I'm not sure I want to use the word optimistic because I'm worried about what's coming. I'm confident it's going to lead to big changes. What I worry about is that for the first decades, it's mostly going to be saving labor. And even in China now, jobs are being shed in manufacturing, and I think this is coming to many, many other things. In principle, it'll raise productivity. In principle, it'll make things cheaper. But we live in a world where monopolies are very powerful, so I think the short-term effect is just lots of unemployment. And that, of course there are benefits. Of course it's going to do something in the long run. But I'm nervous that this is like globalization times 5 or times 10.
You think technological unemployment is a threat? Because we do have shrinking labour forces in many rich countries and very tight labour markets as a result. So might this not be actually quite a good thing?
Yeah, potentially it's a great thing. They'll invent things that'll economize on labor. Unfortunately, we live in a complicated world. Military is the first use of AI, and there it's not a good thing at all. So it's wonderful what they're doing with AI, but there's certainly a dark sides to it that concern me. If I were global ruler, which thank goodness I'm not, I would just put a pause on AI. If in the year 2100 is the big concern of our great-grandchildren that we missed 5 great years of AI, or is the big concern that we screwed it up? To me, if you look at what we did with social media, some of you may have huge social media presence and think it's wonderful. I think it's a bane on human existence, and you can blame it for a lot of our political problems, a lot of mental health problems, and again, AI is social media times 10. Everyone in the States Washington's regretting that we didn't regulate social media, and now everyone, Trump is saying, and everyone's saying, don't regulate AI.